Every drop of rain that falls, from Delhi in New York's Catskill Mountains on the West Branch of the Delaware River to Lewis, Delaware on the Delaware Bay, from Reading, Pennsylvania on the Schuylkill River to Millville, New Jersey on the Morris River, belong to the Delaware River Basin, which is part of the traditional territory of the Lenape. All of these drops eventually make their way to the Delaware Bay. We are all one basin. The basin is big, 13,539 square miles, bigger than Massachusetts and Connecticut combined. The main stem river is 330 miles long from the confluence of its two branches in Hancock, New York, to where it meets the Atlantic Ocean between New Jersey and Delaware. It's the longest undammed river east of the Mississippi, as long as you don't count the headwater dams that give us the New York City reservoirs. Its branches descend from the western flank of the Catskill Mountains in New York. The West Branch begins near Mount Jefferson in the town of Jefferson in Schoharie County and runs about 90 miles before it reaches Hancock. The river's East Branch begins in Grand Gorge, Delaware County, and runs about 75 miles before meeting its partner. Along these headwaters, we reach three massive reservoirs. Cannonsville on the West Branch, which was created with a dam near Stilesville. Hepacton on the East Branch, with a dam in Downsville, and the Neversink with a dam in Neversink. The Neversink River flows into the Delaware at Port Jervis, New York. Roughly half of New York City's drinking water is supplied by these three reservoirs working in unison. The clean, cool waters flowing from the reservoirs have made trout fishing in the upper Delaware a bright spot of economic activity, with the clean waters of the Delaware extending all the way to Trenton. Our Delaware River is a hard-working river. It's a critical water supply for over 14 million people. In total, about 4% of the nation's population relies on the Delaware River Basin for their drinking water, including New York and Philadelphia, the largest and fifth largest cities in the nation. Building these reservoirs created an ongoing tension between New York City and the three lower basin states around how much water New York could take from the river. This resulted in a 1954 Supreme Court decision that led to the development of the Flexible Flow Management Program, an elastic system that attempts to balance all needs. There are 4 national parks on the river. The Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River, starting just below Hancock and ending at Sparrow Bush, New York. The Middle Delaware River Scenic and Recreational River, also known as the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, which runs from just below Milford, Pennsylvania, to just beyond the Gap. The Lower Delaware National Wild and Scenic River, which plays a bit of hide-and-seek with segments above Easton, Pennsylvania, and around Riegelsville, Pennsylvania, then down to the famous site of Washington's Crossing. And finally, the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor at Easton, Pennsylvania. One of them, the Water Gap, is likely better known than the other 3 because it came into existence as a result of the failed plan to build a dam on Tocks Island, just north of the Delaware Water Gap on the Delaware River, for flood control and to supply hydroelectric power. This plan would have created a 37-mile-long lake in the center of what is now the park. Beginning in 1960, land was acquired for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers through eminent domain to create the dam. Roughly 3,000 to 5,000 homes were demolished, and about 15,000 people were displaced by the project. It was a target of significant local opposition, especially from the nascent environmental groups formed as the country celebrated its first Earth Day in April 1970. Funding became a problem, as did an unacceptable geological assessment of the area. So the land was transferred to the National Park Service in 1978. The project ignited a distrust of the federal government in the Upper River Valley that exists to this day. Currently, the entire 197 miles of non-tidal Delaware River, from Hancock, New York, to Trenton, New Jersey, is considered special protection waters, 3/4 of which are also included in the National Wild and Scenic Rivers System. The designation Special Protection Waters was developed by the Delaware River Basin Commission as a way to protect this section of the Delaware River and avoid degradation of the current good water quality. The Delaware River Basin Commission, or DRBC, was created in 1961 by agreement among the 4 watershed states, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, and the federal government. It's charged with oversight of the river's water quality, as well as how much water is in the river. Too much, there's a danger of flooding. Too little, and drought's a worry. The DRBC's advisory committees help to formulate policy for the commissioners to act on, such as the commissioner's recent decision to enact a ban on fracking in the watershed. The DRBC's meetings, as well as the meetings of its advisory committees, are open to the public. As the effects of climate change begin to impact the watershed, the Advisory Committee on Climate Change will counsel the members of the Commission on what the states might expect and what can be done to lessen impacts. Among those will likely be more flooding, more droughts, and sea level rise. Along the non-tidal Delaware, a sequence of river towns dots the banks, each with its own unique history and charm. This corridor includes iconic towns like Frenchtown, Lumberville, Stockton, Lambertville, and New Hope. These towns are now economic hotspots filled with one-of-a-kind restaurants, theaters, galleries, and unique shopping experiences. Historically, access to the river was key, as were the nearby canals like the Delaware Canal in Pennsylvania and the Delaware and Raritan Canal in New Jersey. Today, canal paths offer yet another way to experience the region. With so much cherished culture and history in the area, flooding is an increasing challenge. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection works with the DRBC to limit flooding impacts. In periods of dry weather and drought, the DRBC actively manages stream flow by controlling the timing and amount of water released into the basin's major waterways from a series of reservoirs on the Delaware River tributaries. One of the ways to keep improving the water in our river is to pay attention to how our various fish species are doing. Like people, fish require oxygen to breathe. In the 1960s, oxygen levels in the Delaware River at Philadelphia were almost non-existent in the summer due to pollution. This prevented fish like the American shad from completing their annual spawning runs. A major culprit was human waste, which consumes oxygen from the river. Through a combination of the DRBC's Compact, the Clean Water Act, and investments to improve treatment plants, oxygen levels improved significantly. While additional improvement is possible, the fish have returned, and today we celebrate the Shad Run each year in places like Lambertville, New Jersey, home to the Lewis Fishery, the last remaining commercial operation in the basin. Trenton marks a river turning point, as it's here that it transitions to a tidally influenced river, or estuary. As we travel downstream, buildings, infrastructure, and communities are on the uptick. We're nearing the basin's population center, the Philadelphia, Camden, Wilmington metro area. Along with Trenton and Chester, these cities comprise the urban core of our basin and the nucleus of so much of our basin's history, culture, and vibrance. Families stroll along the promenade on the Schuylkill and enjoy Kramer Hill Park in Camden and the nation's first urban wildlife refuge area in Tinicum. The river here is deep, supporting daily traffic of huge container ships from all over the world. The Delaware River Port Complex is the largest freshwater port in the world, supporting 190,000 jobs and producing more than $85 billion in economic activity. Translation: if you had a banana for breakfast, it likely came through one of our ports. And that cup of coffee or tea was made with water from our watershed. From municipal water facilities, public and private water companies, and wells. The Schuylkill is the Delaware's largest tributary and meets it in southwest Philadelphia. A vast network of freshwater marshes once existed here, obscuring the river's confluence. And here is the largest freshwater tidal marsh remaining in Pennsylvania today, as part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's John Hines National Wildlife Refuge at Tinicum. What we can't see is our history. What was on this site before? Perhaps it was a tannery, chemical maker, or the home of a founding father. The riverfronts in this region have seen many uses over the history of the Delaware and have been dubbed our founding waters. In the early 1700s, sewage was being dumped directly into the rivers and streams, which bred bacteria and consumed the oxygen in the water. This caused waterborne illness to human and fish. Over the next 200 years, mostly due to rapid population growth and increased human activity like slaughterhouses, refineries, and chemical companies, the tidal Delaware River around Philadelphia was largely considered an open sewer for public and industrial waste. The river was so contaminated that ships passing through or docking in the city would have their paint turned brown. The stench of the river made people feel sick. Today, the river's waters are much cleaner, but going from dirty to clean doesn't happen overnight. Several water quality changes in the Delaware are the legacy of our industrial and cultural history. Here in the tidal waters of the Delaware Estuary, challenges continue on multiple fronts. Nitrogen and bacterial pollution from human and animal waste, litter, microplastics, and 1,4-dioxane, a likely human carcinogen according to the EPA. Engineering decisions made 2 centuries ago continue to impact us today. City planners used combined sewer systems, which capture sewage and rainwater in a single system. This was once state-of-the-art, but their time has passed. When large storm events occur, excess rainwater causes untreated sewage to flow into our water. And new challenges continue to surface. The DRBC is working with the U.S. EPA, the 4 watershed states, and other entities to understand and manage these contaminants of emerging concern. They aim to identify occurrences and potential sources of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAs, as well as understand how these contaminants may risk designated uses of our water, such as source water protection, fish consumption advisories, maintenance, and propagation of fish. A long-standing concern for utilities such as the Philadelphia Water Department and New Jersey American Water is how far upstream ocean salt enters the river. Too much salt can harm the intakes that they both have on the river near Philadelphia. The salt front, as it's labeled, is pushed back by the force of fresh water coming downstream. During the 1965 drought of record, that salt front came perilously close to those intakes. DRBC monitors the salt front daily with the goal of protecting drinking and industrial water intakes. The DRBC has made historic progress to reduce polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, into our river. These man-made chemicals were once used in electrical insulation and other industrial applications, but were banned in 1979 after they were identified as a probable human carcinogen. But PCBs are still a leading cause of fish consumption advisories in the Delaware River because they stay in the mud and silt at the bottom of the river. The DRBC has been working to eliminate PCB contamination in the Delaware River Basin, and has been successful in reducing the discharges of top contributors by 76% since 2005 in estuary states through a years-long effort to engage the regulated community. Progress has been made, and there is reason for optimism. Remedying pollution in the Delaware River has gained interest and support not just from public agencies, but from nonprofit and philanthropic groups too. Systemic philanthropic investments in our watershed from the William Penn Foundation, as well as millions of federal dollars funneled through the Delaware River Basin Restoration Program towards restoration projects, have been crucial to bolstering local watershed organizations, driving basin-wide policy, and focusing the impact of land preservation and on-the-ground stream restoration efforts. In each of the basin states, state agencies play a similar role in protecting and monitoring the Delaware's tributaries. Because the river is a shared resource, cooperation is key. Confronting the threats of a changing climate on our complex water resources is a challenge we must bring every tool in our toolbox to address. A concerted effort by us all and a redoubled focus on historically underserved communities can't wait. There are thousands dedicated in the public, private, and philanthropic sectors to achieving the goals and objectives of the Delaware Basin Compact and the Clean Water Act. Traveling south from Philadelphia and Wilmington, the state of Delaware forms the river's western shoreline. On the eastern side, New Jersey suburbia breaks back into rural farms and coastal marshes. Another notable man-made feature in this region is the Salem Nuclear Power Plant. Thermoelectric power generation uses more water from our basin than any other sector, accounting for nearly 60% of all water withdrawals. The Delaware Estuary joined the EPA's National Estuary Program in the late 1980s, providing tools and resources to improve its health. Today, the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, or PDE, hosts the program and convenes diverse partners who contribute to managing and improving this portion of the Delaware River Basin. Commercial fishing remains a critical part of the economy here in the Delaware Bayshore. Oyster and other catch put towns like Bivalve and Shell Pile on the map. And projects from the PDE and others are bringing new ideas to places that once depended entirely on commercial fishing and now face changing conditions for oysters, such as sea level rise. Living shorelines and other projects are helping to mitigate storm impacts to communities while also protecting wetlands and shellfish habitat. Along the Delaware and New Jersey shore, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service refuges at Prime Hook, Bombay Hook, Sequanah Meadows, and Cape May, together with state and local parkland, recognize and protect the unique ecosystems and features of this region for iconic species like the red knot and horseshoe crab, and provide significant draws for tourism and recreation. Finally, with the lighthouses in Lewis, Delaware, and Cape May, New Jersey in sight, the Atlantic Ocean is near. Throughout our journey, we've seen how humans can positively and negatively affect our shared waters. We live in the era of climate change, and our children and grandchildren will thank us for protecting our water and the ecosystem on which we all depend.